Welcome back to the YouTube channel, Gaurav. We're here to review the two test matches between Pakistan and New Zealand. When we talk New Zealand cricket, our friend Michael is always here. We're pleased to have him here talking about New Zealand cricket. And Michael, very interesting, in some ways interesting series. Some say it was the most boring series on earth. Some say it was actually a thriller. We'll talk about all that later, but we'll go with one test at a time. We'll go straight into it. We'll start at, I think it was Karachi.
Both
Pakistan. Both tests were at Karachi. So, summary there. Pakistan won the toss and, of course, batted. Babar Azam made a big 100 in the first innings. Salman also made 100. Sarfaraz Ahmed made an 80, and Pakistan were bowled out for 438. Michael, and this pitch was, as usual in Pakistan, an absolute road, a batting fest.
Yeah, look, it was. There were moments where Pakistan were in a bit of trouble. I mean, they were 48 for 3 after 15 overs. So, and then there was a couple of big partnerships. There was, first of all, there was a big one between Sarfaraz and Babar. And then those two both got out in fairly quick order. And then some impressive batting with the tail from Agha Salman. I mean, that was really pretty impressive stuff. That, there was 16 runs scored from the other end pretty much with him when he scored his 103. So, that's saying something. And it wasn't that he was scoring at a strike rate of 200. It was that he was manipulating the strike, working, making sure that he faced a lot of the bowling. I know Manali had 75 balls for a 7, but he did the job needed for his team. It wasn't one-way traffic that these guys were just piling on the runs quickly. They actually did have to work for them. And it was a pretty good innings by Pakistan in a lot of ways. Babar Azam got a life early on. He got dropped by Daryl Mitchell on about 16, something like that. That very, very much was a decisive point in the match. Because after that, then obviously went on to score big runs and scored them slowly enough that it would have taken something pretty impressive for New Zealand to be able to win it from there. He sort of almost took out a Pakistan loss out of the equation.
Well, it most certainly did.
Much a possibility not too long after that. So but I thought it was interesting. Very impressive to see Ish Sodhi starting to come back. But at the time, in that first innings, looked and thought, what's he doing there? He doesn't look like test quality. But he bowled a couple of good deliveries. And it was like, well, that's what a leg spinner can do. Clean up the tail a little bit. And it's like, maybe the selector's seeing something there. But this is a guy that averaged close to 50 in Test cricket in his first stint, and he didn't. It looked like there was the same sort of thing going to be happening again. He hardly bowled. Ajaz Patel bowled a truckload of overs, and really looked the most threatening of the New Zealand spinners. But it was really it was Southey was the guy that looked like he was going to be the cause of problems. And that's not really how the rest of the tour turned out. No.
We've set. Actually, I'll just go through the scorecard and then we can go back to individual performances. So Pakistan made 438 in their first innings. New Zealand, a hell of a partnership with Tom Layton and Darren Conway. Then Kane Williamson made a double 100. Ish Sodhi, bit like what Salman did, except for score the 100. And really batted well with the tail. And New Zealand made 612 declared. Once again, the pitch didn't change much, so New Zealand dominated that session. or that innings per se.
And I mean, you're talking about it was a turning pitch, but one of the things that Pakistan didn't do is they didn't have any off spinners. So, I mean, they ended up bowling Babar Azam a bit just to try and, well, because you've got left-handers up and down that order who, perhaps struggle against off spin, but with a left armer and a leg spinner, both of them were turning the ball into the left-handers, and they were able to just work it quite nicely, and they were genuinely quite untroubled. Williamson, of course, is a right-hander, but he's probably the best batsman against spin, other than Devon Conway in New Zealand. Devon Conway is really quite good against spin, and Kane Williamson's not far off that. And I think there was something like in the last 10 years, he's averaged 86 against spin bowling. So, he's pretty comfortable facing spin. And so on a turning pitch, and there was a bit of turn in it, you were seeing the Pakistan spinners just looking toothless. Now, Ibrahim Ahmed got some purchase against the tail, but his 5 wickets did cost 200 runs. And so it's 5 for 200 is not quite the same as 5 for 75.
It most certainly is not. New Zealand, we're just racing through this, folks. So New Zealand at 612 declared, 9 down. I think there was only 1.5 days left. So Pakistan, it was up to really Pakistan what their intent would be. However, they did try to make a game out of it. They made 311. Imran ul-Haq made 96, 4 away from 100. Shakil made a 55. Sarfraz Ahmed made a 53. And it seemed that Pakistan actually tried to make a game out of this because they did declare early on day 5 to get New Zealand a target.
Yeah, they did. I mean, it was a tokenistic declaration, I'd say. In terms of they set New Zealand 130 to win in 6 overs. You're not likely to score. I mean, I think they had 13 overs available. There was seven were able to be bowled, but it was really bad light, and it was not. Yeah, there was not likely to be anyone that. Now they're not going to go at 20 and over without So while they did theoretically set New Zealand the target, it was 138 and 13 overs, but bad light was going to take some of that away. Yeah, it was a tokenistic declaration to give us bowlers a go.
We'll get into that bad light because that seems to be the talking point, not just in this Test match but around the world. Having said that, New Zealand they didn't rack it in. They went for it. They tried to went for it, but as you said, 61 for 1. I think they sent out Bracewell as an opener. That didn't really work. So New Zealand tried their best, but as you said, probably a little bit unrealistic. But they went down swinging, and the first test was a drawn. Michael, so from the first test, what really stood out for you, despite
there were
runs?
There were a couple of things in terms of Pakistan's innings was the really interesting. That second innings is when Ish Sodhi picked up 6 for 86. And that was very important because he'd been dropped from the Test team about 6 years ago and had been pigeonholed as a white ball player. Tim Southee comes back in, who's played first class cricket with Ish Sodhi. They played for Northern, and he'd obviously seen something in him that made him want to give Ish the ball. As captain say, he ended up bowling Ish quite a lot. He really did make a contribution in that second innings, and he got some pretty good wickets too. Like you look at who he got out. He got Imam ul-Haq, he got Shan Masood, he got Babar Azam, he got Sarfraz Ahmed, and he got Agha Salman. Now, normally you think of your leg spinner taking out the tail and your finger spinners taking out the top order. That's pretty impressive list of wickets for a leg spinner to pick up. So that was really encouraging. The thing that wasn't quite so encouraging is he just couldn't finish it off. We had Pakistan at 206 for 7 with about 35 overs left in the maybe 40 overs left in base play, and Pakistan 10 runs ahead. So there was at that point there a couple of quick wickets and it was game over. But they just could not dislodge that last pair. The second to last pair, Mohammad Wasim and Siraj Shakil. And Siraj Shakil, I mean, wonderful player. He's going to be an absolute star because he knows how to limit his game. He knows how to put away the shots that are going to get him in trouble. He is going to be an absolutely fantastic player.
Well, he's going to be tested in Australia next year. That's probably the real big test he's going to have.
Yeah, and that's it. That'll test a completely different side of his game. What we've shown is that he can handle a little bit of sideways movement, and he can handle the ball keeping low. Is he going to be able to handle up and down? Is he going to be able to handle variable bounce that you get in Australia? Because that's the thing that a lot of the extra bounce you get in Australia means you got to change how you judge the length. And is he going to adapt to that well? We'll see. That'll be interesting. And he probably won't in his first tour, but he looks to me like the sort of player that will go away and work on it if he fails and come back stronger. So I think he's a real find for Pakistan. What's been a pretty dreary summer. They've found something good there.
I agree with you there. They're definitely a one for the future to look out, and hopefully, from Pakistan's perspective, not from my perspective, he does well on the Australian tour. I want to go back to selection we're still talking about the first test. Neil Wagner bowled only 3 overs in the second innings.
And that was baffling.
Yeah.
In some ways, the tricky thing is Neil Wagner does the spinner's job, right? He doesn't often bowl in the first 40 overs with the ball. He's got to wait for the ball to get a bit older and for the ball to start to, when the ball gets a bit soft and it starts to get too paced, that's when he really comes into his own. But because we bowled a lot of overs of spin, the ball didn't get damaged as much as it normally would. So he didn't have that opportunity to come in and use that softer ball. And so then the question is, if you're only going to play 2 seamers, why is Wagner one of them? But on those pitches, he actually really adds something. And I think we missed a trick by not bowling him more. I think he should have, particularly when we had the tail in, he should have been given the ball and just told to head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Give him it all. And see how we go. His ability to bowl 2 balls in roughly the same place, 2 bounces in almost identical spot, and have it arrive at completely different places to the batsman is something that top order batsmen struggle with. Tail enders have got no hope. So if he was given that chance to do that, even if he didn't get them out, he may well have injured them out. It does the same job, but you need to get him in there. You need to give him the ball, get him a chance to do something. And I think it was a mistake from Southee to not give him the ball more. But then you've got to say, it's nice to see a New Zealand captain actually letting the spinners have a bowl, because it hasn't happened enough.
Yeah. So you reckon it was actually a good decision to actually play him in the first test?
It's a tricky one,
because I saw when he did bowl, he tried his normal leg side plan. I just felt the pitches were too slow for that. They didn't bounce as much, and the Pakistan batsmen were very comfortable against him. I can't remember him troubling that many batsmen.
I think the issue is more that the ball was still too hard, rather than it didn't get roughed up enough for him. The 2 things he's really good at, he's good at keeping it up full and reverse swing. So that big that sort of outswinging Yorker with a 50 overall ball, and especially when you've been pushed back with the bouncer, that Yorker is deadly. He's taken about a third of his wickets with full balls. It's a roughly 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 split with him. Short balls, good length balls, and full balls. You only think that he takes lots with the short balls because they're so dramatic. And because most batsmen bowlers only take sort of 5 to 10% of their wickets with short balls, so him taking a third is massive. But he does still take a lot with the ones that go away. Your sort of left arm outswing is really hard to play. So that's one thing that that he does have. And on those, Pakistan, you do expect a bit of reverse swing. It just didn't really happen. But he didn't get a chance to do it either. So I'm not sure why he was picked if they weren't planning on bowling him. And if they were planning on bowling him, I'm not sure why they didn't. It's just one of those, you wonder what the thought process was there. And maybe that was a misread of the conditions, but I would have liked to have seen him being given the ball a bit more.
Actually, no, but I'll ask one more question. Do you think they underbowled Daryl Mitchell? Could have bowled him a couple of more overs? We'll get to him in the second test, but yeah.
Not really, because Daryl Mitchell's, he's a little bit like, he's a bit like Colin de Grandhomme, but not quite as skillful. All right. Yep. If you get the conditions right, he can, particularly if the batsmen are trying to score, he can tie them up and he can make things a bit difficult, but he's not going to earn you many wickets other than he's good at building pressure from one end. And, if we had one bowler who was firing and the other guy's not building any pressure, then maybe that's when you bring him in. But I'm not sure. Maybe he could have bowled at the other end to Sodhi a little bit.
We'll
but
talk
he's
about
not really your first option.
We'll talk about Mitchell in the next test. We'll actually get to the next test match. So just recapping, this match took place on the 26th of December, Boxing Day, but it isn't a Boxing Day in Pakistan, till the 30th. The match was drawn. So we go to test number 2 again in Karachi. There was one change by New Zealand. Neil Wagner was out and Matt Henry came in. Were you happy with that decision?
Well, there's no point. There's no point picking Neil Wagner if you're not going to bowl him. He's not there for his batting.
No.
So, I would have probably, if he was available, I would have loved to have had Lockie Ferguson or Adam Milne, even though you can't really rely on Adam Milne to bowl more than 6 overs in a day. So probably Lockie Ferguson is who you'd go. I wouldn't have minded him and saying, because we've got so many spinners, you can actually just have, you're going to bowl 3-4 over spells, and that's all, and just bowl them fast and bowl them aggressive and just see what happens. And that's it. That's all we're expecting of you. I think that might have been a good option, but he's not actually in Pakistan, so that wasn't an option,
Yeah. Trent Boult would have been handy. He's playing Big Bash. But of course we know the contracts with Tim Boult. So that's an unfortunate reality that that players will choose to take the money, and especially as they get older, it's just what's going to happen. Exactly right. So, however, once again, New Zealand, Pakistan won the toss and they batted, and oh my goodness, just strange, just trying to do baseball stuff by.
I think New Zealand won the toss. New Zealand won the toss. New Zealand won the toss and batted. Scored 449.
Okay. And of course, I had to delete the wrong scorecard, despite that. Oh dear. Okay, so New Zealand won, made 449. Darren Conway was unbelievable again. It looked like one of those pitches where you'd think, oh, here we go again.
That's right. It looked like a 600 pitch while they were batting together, and then all of a sudden, all of a sudden you saw Mitchell, Bracewell, Nichols all go bang, bang, bang. And it was like, cool, this is starting to get a little bit interesting. We went from 234 for 2. Oh, sorry, 234 for 1 to 279 for 6. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's a bit of a wobble here. But then an outstanding final wicket partnership. And Matt Henry and Ajaz Patel, and
out of all people,
actually, pardon?
Out of all people, out of all batsmen,
not quite as you'd expect it so much. I mean, Matt Henry can hit, and that's I remember watching him. I think he was on debut for Canterbury, and I saw him hit a ball miles, absolute miles out of the park and across the road at Colin Maiden Park at Auckland, which is, Auckland has some very small grounds, Eden Park and Eden Park number 2, but Colin Maiden is not a small ground, and it's 2 rugby fields with the cricket pitch in the middle. So when you hit it out of that one, it's a decent hit. And so I remember seeing him do that on debut. And so we knew he could hit, but that's not normally enough to be successful in Test cricket. But it was today. It was that day.
And as you said, that was a very crucial partnership because, as you said, there was a collapse. Latham and Conway made it look like a 600 pitch, but there was a collapse, and that could have been the difference in this Test match. That partnership right there, that was very important. Probably won't get talked about because of what happened later on in this Test match, but that was a very crucial last stand.
Yeah, it was, and I think I remember. I could be wrong here. That I think one of them was dropped early on by Safras. I think he dropped 6 catches in the in the series. So it was. I'm pretty sure he dropped one of those guys early. Let's have a look. Dropped catches. They dropped. Latham, Blundell, and Bracewell are the 3 that he dropped in that one. But yeah, he's not a great.
I think it might have been a stumping.
He won man of the match. He won man of the match and man of the series, despite dropping 6 catches as keeper. And I think he missed a stumping as well. It was. I mean,
he did. Yeah,
it was an inept performance behind the stumps. And the fact is, he saved the match for Pakistan with the bat. But if he had have kept better, he wouldn't have needed to because they would have won by a big margin. You can talk all you like about his batting, but his keeping is the reason that Pakistan didn't win both of those matches. I think Pakistan fans who are celebrating him need to just wonder whether or not he might be better to be picked as a batsman rather than as a keeper. You spare thought for Rizwan because he did get dropped, and it looks like he may not come back anytime soon to that Test team. So, I know there's some politics there too. They're very much which camp you're in, and we saw it in New Zealand cricket for a while, where there was the Adam Parori, Lee Jamon camps, and there was. I think I've lost you, Lucas. Hopefully you come back. But there was in New Zealand cricket for a while. There was very much the Lee Jamon camp, and there was the Adam Parori camp. And
I can hear Michael keep going.
Yep. And when that was happening, see Adam Parori used to get booed when he walked onto the ground in a New Zealand shirt by the Canterbury fans because they wanted Lee Jamon to be there. I think there's a similar sort of thing with the different regions in Pakistan. And it's not nice to see that sort of regionalism come in, but in some ways, but in other ways, it's actually showing that things are quite healthy, that people are identifying with their local region more, as well as the national team. I think there's certainly there's a negative to it, but there's also a positive.
Well, that actually happened to Adam Gilchrist when Ian Healy got told to step down, and I remember the crowd were not so nice to Gilchrist that day, and it turned out to be probably one of Australia's best ever keepers. If not in Australia, but ever.
It didn't last long, that one.
It didn't last long, no. Pakistan responded, making 408, and goodness me, just strange batting in the first 10 minutes by Pakistan. It was a bit like baseball, Michael. Anything outside off something, they absolutely tried to drill out the park. There was a poor shot, I think that was by Inam. Shafiq, and then Masood tried to take down, I think that was Patel, and then Blundell took a stumping. Just madness by Pakistan, very poor shot selections, but Inman al-Haq and Shakil, we'll talk about him, and we've just talked about him, steadied the partnership. Shakil made another 100. Sarfraz Ahmed, we just said he made man of the series. 78, and Salman, who seems to be a little handy lower order batsman, made 41, and Pakistan grafted their way to 408. Michael.
Yeah, and again, that 41 was a an impressive 41 because he was doing all the scoring.
Mm.
You know, I think what his 41 was in a partnership of 53. So there was nothing coming from the other end. He just took it all on himself.
Keep going, Michael.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the key talking points there in some ways, again, Ish Sodhi picking up a bunch of wickets, you know, and this time more leg spinner type wickets. Number 9, 10, 11. Bang, bang, bang. Knocked them over quickly. You know, and that's what you want to see your leg spinners doing. You know, and you know, it's nice to see a leg spinner cleaning up the tail. And speaking as a former leg spinner, that's exactly what you want to see. So, you know, that was encouraging. Mitchell's bowling again, breaking the partnership, and an impressive bit of work from Tom Blundell. Yeah.
Brilliant take. That's probably one of the best takes you'll ever see. Amazing.
Yeah. Look, a lightning stumping off a medium pacer, you know, down the leg side. I mean, that's the thing you dream about as a keeper. You know, that's you know, it's like when Gilchrist got his stumping off McGrath. You know,
yes.
You know, that's the sort of thing. That's the one you hang on the wall. The picture of that. So you know, it was an impressive bit of work, and I mean, what we've seen is Tom Blundell wasn't the first choice keeper when he started in the side. In fact, he played as a specialist batsman for a while. But now, I mean, I still think Tom Latham's a slightly better keeper, but you're not going to dislodge Blundell from. You know, he was under a bit of pressure before. He's not under any pressure whatsoever now.
I think he's cemented his place for a while. Speaking of Mitchell, we talked about in the first match, did he not bowl enough? Well, he was absolutely brilliant. Not just in this first inning, second innings, we'll get to that a bit later, but little cat and mouse between Shaquille and Mitchell, you know, just every now and often just blocking and hitting one down the ground. That was very interesting, but Mitchell, I think his first ball, I think there was an LBW decision, and there was just a little edge, I think, that saved him, and it turned out to be the golden choice because he was fantastic.
Yeah, well, it's also, I mean, I don't know if you've ever, like in playing cricket, you've ever had a bunch of quick bowlers or like there's a fast bowlers and spinners bowling, and they're all about this. The fast bowlers are all about the same speed. The spinners are all a bit slower, and you get someone that bowls in between them, and everyone suddenly finds it difficult to play them for some reason. There's that thing about medium paces that they're just awkward, and you sort of feel like I should get hold of this guy. I should be able to smash him.
Yeah.
And when you can't, it gets frustrating. And that frustration results in wickets quite often. You know, I played with a guy who was rubbish, absolute rubbish. And he picked up truckloads of wickets by bowling these rubbish little medium paces that people would smash to the covers. You know, and, you know, if it was one of those things you just go, I used to face someone, I'd hit him with no problem whatsoever. And I was not a good batsman. But these guys that were good batsmen were getting out to him all the time. And sometimes that happens when you get that in-between pace. It's just, you get your timing wrong. You know, a friend of mine who's played quite a bit of top-level cricket talked about, you know, he said, the best bowler I ever faced was this guy who played Test cricket. And the fastest I played was this guy who played Test cricket. And, you know, I placed a spinner and he was all over for me, you know, he played Test cricket. And I said, who was the hardest you faced? And I was expecting it would be someone like Simon Dole or Daniel Vittori. He'd faced a lot of these guys. I said, Scott Cyrus. Scott Cyrus was the hardest bowler I ever faced. I said, what? You know. He said, yeah, every ball, you felt like he was going to get you out. He was at you every ball. And every ball, you know, he's bowling his 125 Ks. And then he's staring you down and he's at you the whole time. And he said, there's something about a medium pacer that you think you should be able to get. And yet, they're working on your weaknesses. They're thinking like a batsman, not like a bowler. And I think Daryl Mitchell perhaps is a bit like that.
Indeed. So moving to second innings, New Zealand or Pakistan made 408 in their first. New Zealand made 277. They declared 5 down. They wanted to push a result here. Bracewell finished 74 not out, made some late hitting 11 fours. Tom Latham, a lot of starts in this innings. Tom Blundell made 74, Latham 62, Kane Williamson made 41. But you can't really judge them on that. They were looking for quick runs. Probably Latham be somewhat disappointed he didn't make 100 after getting a good start, but some good hitting in the end.
Yeah, look, what happened is there were two partnerships, really. You know, there was the partnership of 110 roughly between Latham and Williamson, and then both of them got out pretty much bang bang. Nichols didn't last much longer, and then there was a 130 run odd partnership between Bracewell and Blundell, and that was enough really to get New Zealand to a point where we were able to declare and set what was pretty much a perfect declaration, I think. You know, I was going through the stats and I was thinking, I reckon that the sweet spot was 325 before the game. I thought if it's 325 and about 95 overs, that seemed to be about where that was close enough that they'd have a crack and far enough away that that they were unlikely to get there. And so I was doing my calculation. I was like, oh, that's where I'd be doing it. And they declared 319 with 93. So that's pretty close to 325 with 95. And it turned out to be excellent. You know, like an absolute inspired decision because, you know, the declaration, there were 2 wickets fell bang on the bang on the end of the play. And so Pakistan started at 0 for 2. Or for Australian listeners, two wickets and no runs.
You
know, so that's an amazing start. But then there was a couple of wickets fell pretty quickly, and Pakistan before long were at 80 for 5 and going, oh, you know, they need another 240 runs or whatever, 240 odd runs with only 5 wickets in hand. But then came a great partnership.
Yeah.
And at the halfway point, so the halfway point today, at the drinks, the middle drinks, Pakistan were bang on halfway to their total. So it was halfway in the day, halfway through the innings, they'd got half the amount of runs, New Zealand got half the number of wickets. Perfect scenario. You know, and it did turn. There was just those moments throughout. There was just a wonderful finish to a test match until the very finish.
Yeah, which seems to be the talking point. Before that, Pakistan they did try. The Shakil and Ahmed partnership reminded me a bit about Pujara and Pant at the Gabba, where one was just grinding and one was counterattacking. Probably not as explosive as Pant, but I had vibes there.
Yeah. Well, in fact, in some ways, Safra slowed down a little bit after Shakil got out and when he had support coming from the other end. But there was a period where they were going at about 4.5 and over, and they were doing it reasonably comfortably without Shakil scoring anything. And then what happened is Daryl Mitchell came into bowl. And he got hit for 4 in his first ball. Yeah. And I think he conceded one other run in the rest of his next 4 overs. And it just changed the momentum. So there was it created a bit of pressure. And what happens, you started to see the players started to get a bit fidgety and things all tightened up. But they made it through despite a couple of loose shots and a couple of close calls for LBW. They made it through until tea, and it was in this situation where they're now like, wow, they've got to get 130 runs in 30 overs with 5 wickets in hand. This is entirely doable.
Yeah.
But then not long after that, Shakil got out.
Yeah, brilliant catch by Mitchell, by the way. That was a fantastic catch by Mitchell.
Well, I mean, he's got hands the size of a big screen TV. He shouldn't really be dropping anything. The fact that he dropped one in the first one, it should be, he should be mortified. The guy has got absolutely enormous hands. Like he should never be dropping a thing. But yeah, he's an athlete, and he would have been devastated at dropping that catch. But yeah, he picked up almost a one to level it. So you look there. Then there was another little good partnership between Selman and Sarfraz.
Yeah.
And suddenly it looks like Pakistan are going to cruise in. Then bang, bang, 3 wickets. Now it's having to try and defend and try to hold on. And they did. The 2 tail enders managed to see it out until with 3 overs to go, there was a decision made to review an LBW. And that may have been the bad call because it took the time out of the game as they stopped to review the LBW. And that was precious time because the light was fading. And possibly what the decision should have been made was to let's just accept the umpire's call and get on with it.
Yeah.
But you can see why they took that risk. It was perhaps worth a try, but it was not out. And at that point there was just not enough time to get that conclusion. 3 overs left. Pakistan needed 17 runs. New Zealand needed 16 runs. So 15 runs. They needed 15 runs off the last 3 overs. New Zealand needed 1 wicket. Absolutely beautiful setup. And then Ali Dar looked at his light meter.
Yeah.
So
right.
I do have a thought on this, on the light meter issue. That I can understand why they've done it. In terms of they set it up early in the test. At this point here, we think it's too dark. Now we will go off anything that, but and it allows a degree of consistency. But I do feel that often the first time is taken a little bit too. It's taken too soon, and so what happens is you get a situation. The light meter gives you a good indication of the light, but it's not a perfect indication. And I think that both sides would have been happy to play on. If both sides are happy to play on, I'm not sure the umpire should be looking at his light meter. It should actually require someone from one of the teams to say, how about that light umpire, for them to actually look at the light meter. And that's the way it used to be. It used to be that the players had to
it used to be in the batsman's hands,
And I think actually having fielded and been almost killed by a ball it seemed where I just couldn't see it coming. It was hit towards me. It was playing in the twilight. I understand why from the safety perspective they wanted to, actually fielders should be able to appeal against the lights too. I don't have a problem with that. But if both teams are happy to play, then maybe we should keep playing.
Well,
and maybe we should mention the floodlights on,
Yeah. You mentioned the keyword safety. And before that, Brian, who was it? Naseem, both had caps on. And before that, we went off for a bad light. Naseem hit a 6 off that over, the over before we went off bad light. So it seems to me he wasn't having any trouble whatsoever seeing that ball. So you would think common sense, because you have to remember that this was the first time, I think, in this test match that bad light stopped play. So there wasn't like a pre-reading, that we went off in day one, we're going to go by that reading. So surely common sense could have came into play and just let him go through the damn 3 overs. Surely.
Yeah. Had there not been it's quite late at night, so I'd missed some of the ends of the day's play. Then had it not gone off for on one of the earlier days?
I don't think they did in this test match because they didn't there wasn't like a set time. So they just went off just the light itself, because literally when the rules are is, as you know, that once you come off a bad light, that's the benchmark or whatever that reading is for the whole test. I don't think that was ever taken into consideration.
Oh, wow. Yeah, look at that. They did go off the end of day 4. They decided they couldn't come back and finish that over off.
Oh, okay, so they did go off.
But then maybe it was the last over, so they didn't do it. So, but that might have
that's
been,
when the wicket fell from Sodhi. That was the last over with Sodhi. Yeah. So surely,
if there isn't a benchmark, it should have been up to the players and the umpires to work together on that one. I can understand. I can understand that. And look, also, I guess perhaps the umpires were saying we're having trouble seeing the ball. and if that's the case, then yeah, I guess you've got to go off because it's pretty tough umpiring when you can see the ball's hard enough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was speaking of the umpiring, we understand conditions are very tough over there, but especially in the second test, there were a lot of howlers. There was one with who's the other? Alim Dan. Who's the other umpire?
Wolf.
Yeah, there was one where there was a snicko where he gave it out and it nowhere near the bat. And it just seemed to me the umpires just did not have an idea what was going on. And I thought that played a part in some decision makings with DRS, because it seemed to me every DRS we had, especially in the first test match, was reviewed because they just didn't want to trust the umpire.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, some of it was also that you've got a couple of trigger-happy captains. I mean, Tim Southey genuinely believes everything is out. So,
he's a bowler, so what do you expect?
Yeah. Oh, look, I mean, some of the things he appeals for, you thought they were over-appealing until you see that he's trying to get someone to, a ball that pitches half a foot outside leg stump, and he's appealing for it for LBW and wanting the captain to go upstairs, and everyone's looking at him going, no, it's just not out. He's got absolutely no idea. So there's a point where having him making those decisions is a really, really bad idea. And I'm glad that they're using a committee to make the decision rather than just the captain. But yeah, I do feel like I think it's a hard place to umpire. Actually, I think the light's a bit difficult to see. I'm loath to criticize umpires generally because actually it's a really hard job, and I've tried doing it, and it's really difficult. But these guys are paid to do it. You sometimes you expect a little bit better. I think when it's a third umpire makes a mistake, that's when I start getting But then at the same time, also, I'm aware that the quality of picture that the third umpire gets is better than the quality of picture we get at home. And sometimes things that aren't clear on our screens are actually crystal clear on theirs. So
that's a very good point.
So sometimes, you look at something and go, oh, look, there's too much doubt, they can't give that. And whereas on their screen, it's absolutely crystal clear what's happened. And there's no doubt at all. So it just hasn't gone through the compression and decompression that it happens, and there's an awful lot of signal loss in getting it to us. So I'm cautious to criticize that. But when there are things like the spike on the back, and that could be from anything when the ball goes past the bat, and given not out for a catch or that sort of thing, it goes, well, that makes me a little disappointed. But generally, I'm going to try not to criticize umpires because it's actually really difficult. And I didn't see enough of the game to be able to say that I saw any genuine howlers. But then some of that is I'm moving house at the moment, and was listening on the radio more than watching on. So there could have been mistakes that I missed, but I didn't feel like it was terrible umpiring.
So you moved away from the harbour now?
No. We've sold our house in the south of New Zealand and emptying our house full of our stuff, returning it to the house up by the harbour. And the house of all of the borrowed furniture we've got there, we're going to have to be running around and delivering that back to people, give them back their couches and beds, so we're getting our ones in. So,
come on, Michael.
Busy packing up everything now.
Yeah. So this game, the 2nd of January to the 6th, ended in a draw. Series ended in a 0-0 draw. Now there's a bit of debate whether was this a good series or was this the most boring series ever? Now, my opinion is that there are 10 days played in this test match, and only really 2 of them were any good. That's my opinion. I don't think that makes for a good series. I think 2 out of 10 days that you see good cricket doesn't make a good series, in my opinion. Where do you sit on that?
Look, I agree that 2 out of 10 days isn't good, and if you have those games that there are an absolute road. Like we saw for a while at the Sinhalese Sports Club in Colombo. They used to produce these pitches that were just they were just the most placid, and both teams scored 600, and then all of a sudden, at about day 3.5, the switch flicked, and both teams are bowled out for 70.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And that one there is like, well, yes, we've got, you've got some pretty dull cricket followed by some really exciting cricket. It's maybe not ideal. This wasn't really like that. I thought the second test was better than the first one. But in the second test, what we saw was there were periods where the batsmen were in control, but there were periods where there was a really even battle. When the ball started reversing, and there was a real, like the end of the first day, in parts of the second day, parts of the third day, and then the fourth day I thought was actually quite engaging cricket. The fourth day and fifth day. So I think for this test here, there were 3 out of the 5 days that were actually really quite good cricket, and then there was a bit where it was a bit one-sided. But there was a progression, there was a story happening in this game, and that's what you want. It doesn't have to all be perfectly balanced. It can be periods of the batsmen are in control, periods of the bowlers in control, as long as it's not same the whole time. So I thought the second test was really quite good. I thought the pitch they got it. That's an excellent pitch. If you produce pitches like that, you'll get results most of the time, but you'll be good cricket happening in the process. The first pitch, not quite such a fan, but again. There was some moments in that game where there was a genuine contest. There was just too much that it wasn't. So I think as far as a good series, I think it's a 5 out of 10 or 6 out of 10. It wasn't a 3 out of 10. It wasn't one where some of the games that played in the West Indies in the 70s before they got good bowlers, where they were just on an absolute road, and it was, the first team scores 700, the second team scores 550. It wasn't one of those it wasn't like that. I mean, that's a 1 out of 10 sort of series. Yeah. This one there was actually, one of the tests was quite good. One of them was a bit average.
So we saw a 0-0 draw. Do you think New Zealand would be happy with that? If you said to them it's going to end 0-0, would they take that?
Probably at the start of the series, they probably would have been happy. I mean, I thought we were going to get beaten. I thought we were going to lose 2-0.
Really?
I thought England had set up Pakistan really well.
Wow.
They'd been playing some really tough cricket, and they were going to come out and they were going to blow us away. And that didn't happen.
I'm really the opposite, glad. Michael. I thought New Zealand would win 2-0. I saw Pakistan no hope of winning any test matches from what I've seen.
No. Well, I mean, I think they were actually in those games against England. A couple of those games as well. I mean, they lost the matches, but they weren't, and they were thrashed in the last one. But the first one actually wasn't. There was they were in the games, and that's a pretty good England side. So I thought we were going to have to play pretty well to beat them. And then, I think we did play quite well. In the end, it's disappointing that we didn't win both of the tests. And the fact that we're now, it shows the progression of New Zealand cricket, that 10 years ago, we would have been really happy with both of those to have survived with a draw. Now we're really disappointed that the other team is happy to have got away with a draw. And that shows where the change in where New Zealand lies. So it was very much New Zealand was the team that was hoping to draw matches. Now we're the team that's hoping to win them, and other teams are hoping to draw.
Well, I was actually going to have a joke there. Only the elite win in Pakistan, hence Australia, but I'm not going to say that because I don't think England's elite. That's just my bias. Yeah. And speaking of England, I know James Butler is just stirring me up on Twitter, but trust me, Butler, when the Ashes come, I'll be ready, and so will Australia. Now, we saw Sarfraz Ahmed play of the series. Who was your play of the series for New Zealand perspective?
Look, it was tough for me between Blundell and Sodhi. And I think I would have probably gone with Blundell. I think his keeping was the thing was he didn't keep in the final innings. If he had kept in the final innings, probably that would have picked up a couple of catches. That would have been enough to put him across the line. I think 4 stumpings. I think BJ Watling got 4 stumpings in his entire career. To pick them up in 2 matches shows just that he is that much better up to the stumps than what Watling had been. He's a genuinely good keeper. and he batted really well. I think Sodhi was the other one. I mean, he did what we want to see a leg spinner doing. I don't know what his final average was, but it would have been about 24 or something in the series. You know, as an overseas spinner against players that, and the Pakistani style of playing spin, where you, it's the way I used to teach batsmen to play. I love the Pakistani system. It's really hard to bowl to. They take 3 steps while the ball's down, 1 forward, 1 back, 1 forward. And by doing that, they're almost always in the right position. And, you know, to get to beat a Pakistani batsman in the air is actually, they're used to facing such quality spin in the tape ball growing up that you've got to be really good. And he did it time after time, especially once he settled in. And in the first test, he still looked like a white ball player that had been thrown a red ball. But in that second test, he looked like he belonged there. He looked like a test match leg spinner. And there's not many of those in history. Actually, it's a pretty rare thing. Quality leg spinners in test cricket. There's been 4 from Australia, and I mean I'm not counting McGill or Kerry O'Keefe or some of those guys that did all right. There've been 4 genuine quality leg spinners that have come out of Australia. There's been 2 out of India, and there's really been maybe 4 others in Test history. So it's a very rare thing. And if Ish Sodhi can become one of those, that's exciting, And it's not too late for him. He's still reasonably young for a spinner.
I saw you tweet about this, so I'm going to mention it to you. How did you see Jazz Patel's game? Considering what we saw in India, probably a little bit disappointed.
Incredibly disappointing. But part of that was, I think, matchups. Look, the Pakistanis, again, very good players against spin, and it was very clear that they went in with a plan for how to play Ajaz. And they threw him off his line, and he didn't respond very well to it. And that's something that's going to have to go back to domestic cricket. What will happen is Gary Stead will be getting on the phone to all of the domestic coaches and saying, this is how I want you to train your batsmen to play against Ajaz Patel, and let's see if he can respond to it. So all of the domestic players will be doing what Sarfraz did to him and seeing whether they can put him off his game. And he's going to have to learn to adapt to that, because this is how everyone's going to play him now. So there was a matchup issue there. But it was disappointing they only bowled him 3 or 4 overs or however many it was in the second innings. Again, just like with Wagner, we know that Ajaz Patel, the thing that he's really good at is cleaning up the tail. And he just wasn't given a chance to bowl at that tail end partnership. That we know that he's the sort of guy, he's done it to Pakistan before. He's picked up a hatful of wickets at the end of the day to bowl them out. Perhaps he should have been given an over there, that maybe one of the ones that Sodhi had. Maybe it should have been Ajaz, and see whether or not he could get one to sneak through and get LBW or something like that.
So this might be Ajaz Patel answer here, but who was the most disappointing for you in this series?
Henry Nicholls.
Okay, yep.
Henry Nicholls had a chance here because he's in an interesting position where, he's batting. He's basically, it's him and Daryl Mitchell are basically playing for one spot once we get out of Asia, because Young will come back to open, Conway will move to number 4, and it'll be either Nicholls or Mitchell batting at number 5. And neither of them really put their hand up with the bat to say, I'm the number 5. So both of those guys were a bit disappointing. But Henry Nicholls in particular, in the first test, we know he's got a weakness against off spin, but he should have dominated those games. He should have done really well, because they didn't have an off spinner in the first game. It's why they brought Babar Azam on to bowl to him, because he's got a problem against off spin. I just felt like that was disappointing that he had an opportunity and he didn't really take it.
How did you see Tim Southee's captaincy? There was a moment in that yesterday, in that last day, where you think, where's Sodhi? Why is Sodhi not bowling? Henry bowled a lot of overs in that spell yesterday, and people were saying, where's Sodhi? Where's Sodhi? Where's the spinners? So how did you see that?
Oh, look, I think what you've got to do is it's really easy to criticize a plan when you haven't given it enough time to work. um,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and I don't mind. They thought they saw something, and they had Southey and Henry bowled together with the old ball, trying to get a bit of reverse or something. I think
yeah,
it's fine to try that. You know, and
yeah,
I think that's worth a crack.
yeah.
Um,
Well, it
I,
worked. It got the breakthrough.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and so do you criticize it? Well, I don't think you do.
No, yeah,
And so what I would say is he seemed he seemed more patient than I was expecting him to be. But I did think that he didn't use his resources so quite as well as he would have liked to have. You know, if you look back on it, you've got good bowlers in Wagner and Patel who in innings where we needed to bowl a team out weren't given a chance to bowl enough. And I think probably he'll look back on it and go, okay, that's something I can work on. But perhaps those guys need to put their hands up and actually be the ones to say, well, give me the ball skip. You know, maybe that needs to happen a bit more too.
Trust me, it happens in Australia with Pat Cummins. They seem to like to bowl a lot of themselves, because Southey actually did bowl a lot of overs in this series. A lot.
Yep.
So that's. So do you think he overbowled himself, or?
No, because he's an excellent bowler in those conditions.
Yeah.
You know, and I think of the quick bowlers, he was probably. I'll just look up the wickets, but I mean, I would say of the quick bowlers, was he the guy that took the most? Yeah, he took 6 wickets. You know, Hassan Ali took 1. Yeah, like he was really the Nazim Shah, I guess, took 4. But yeah, Southey actually did the job. I mean, he did what you wanted him to do. You can't really complain when he's picking up 6 wickets at 35 apiece. You know, he probably could have picked up a couple more, but he gave himself a fair shot at it. And you know, and I don't have a problem with it. He didn't bowl nearly as much as he bowled Bracewell or Sodhi. You know, and so you'd say that's not too bad. He bowled roughly 20 overs per innings, 21 overs per innings. That's about what you'd expect your top medium pacer to do.
So we'll move away from the. Got a little bit of time left, a couple of minutes left. Move away from this series. We've got a couple of ODIs coming up, but I'm going to actually go forward to that. I'm going to go forward to February, New Zealand summer. Big test match between England, 2 test series. What do you expect from there? Because we know New Zealand are going to produce green tops, and at the back end they're going to get harder. So will New Zealand play this Bazball style game on those green tops?
Look, it'll be interesting to see. I'm not sure that we'll play. Well, maybe we will play green tops. I think what we do tend to do is the fake green pitches, the ones that look really, really green, don't actually move around as much as they actually look like
hard later on. Yeah.
I mean, that's what we do tend to produce. And you never tell. You can never tell looking at a pitch if it's going to be one of those or if it's going to be an absolute mumber. You know, so that's why everyone always bowls first in New Zealand and then watches the opposition score 350. But yeah, I think it's I think we're likely to play a lot more Kane Stead style in terms of you know, they are a lot more build the pressure, put the pressure on, you know, crank it up, make the opposition feel the heat. I think that's more the style. But we'll see. Southey might get goaded into playing, but you saw he did that against Pakistan. He tried to build the pressure, and that's when the wickets came. So I think that's probably what he'll do.
Who will be the number 1 spinner in that series? Who do you expect?
Maybe Kane Williamson. You don't bowl spin in New Zealand.
Of course not. What a silly question.
No, I don't know, but I think look, it depends
well, let me put it like this way: who can do the Joe Root role? Who can be a little part timer?
Well, the fact is actually that our spinners have actually done reasonably well against England and New Zealand conditions in the past. So I think we could see Ajaz Patel come in. we could actually see on the back of this performance, Ish Sodhi may well be the guy that comes back, because we know that he has his last couple of years he's averaged about 24 in domestic cricket in New Zealand in first class cricket. So he's picked up some wins. He hasn't played a huge number of red ball games because of playing for New Zealand in white ball cricket. But the ones he has played, he's done pretty well. He's picked up some wickets and what we've seen is he looked like a proper player. We know England generally are a bit rubbish against leg spin. So Ish Sodhi could be worth a go.
Okay, and we're going to wrap out our show here. So thank you, Michael. I can add him on Twitter, the Jack of all trades. And myself, Lucas R32 Sky, or Adelaide Uni Lucas, my club cricket account. We'll follow you back. We'll interact with you like I do with Michael. Michael, it's been a pleasure covering this series. Fortunately, from your perspective, hope to win, but a draw is better than a loss.
Yeah, well, it's certainly. I mean, it's not a terrible result, but we would have certainly loved to have seen a win.
Indeed. So thank you. Oh, just before we do go, will Trent Boult be available for that series?
I think so. So if it's at home, he's pretty much available.
Okay.
And it's only really in terms of if it's outside New Zealand and clashing with the league, then he'll be playing the league cricket. Is that
a good example? Does that bother you that he doesn't want to play outside of New Zealand but is happy to play in New Zealand? Is that a problem?
Well, I mean, no. Look, I don't have a problem with it in terms of he's basically said if there's league cricket on that he's going to earn more money in, then he's going to be playing with that generally. But he does want to play some matches for New Zealand, and he may be available on a ad hoc basis for other white ball tournaments or that sort of thing. We'll see how it works going forward. I wonder if he's going to actually miss it. He's going to look at the New Zealanders mates, because a lot of these guys are his mates. So there's a large group of Northern Districts players. They grew up together. It'll be interesting to see how they go. He'll be thinking, I'd love to be, I'd love to have been over there. Maybe I could have been the difference. See whether or not that stuff actually makes him want to come back. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe he's actually got the point, there was no criticism really of John Reid for saying, look, I'm going to put my career as a school teacher ahead of cricket, and I'm only going to play matches at work during school holidays. People thought that was actually a really sensible thing. Some of the other players who back in the amateur day who were like, well, I can't get time off work, so I'm not going to go on this tour. That seemed to be a perfectly acceptable thing. Now, effectively, they're doing the same thing because the amount of money that they're earning in these things is so much more than their New Zealand match fees that they're effectively, if they leave those leagues, they are effectively paying to play for New Zealand. And I don't think it's fair to expect people to pay to play for their country.
Yep. And as you said, we can't all be Australia or England where, very rich boards or India, money behind them. Yep. There are, boards that can't afford that money. So when you look at it like that, as you've discussed on previous shows, you can't really blame Trent Boult for making those decisions or any other New Zealand cricket or not any player around the world.
No, well, I think New Zealand cricket has made a point to try and not compete. And it's disappointing a little bit that Boult has gone that way, but I think that's the right decision from New Zealand to say, well, we're not going to try and compete. We're not going to try and stop people from playing in the leagues, but we do want them to play for New Zealand as much as possible.
Okay, and that concludes our show. New Zealand will stay in Pakistan for a three-match ODI series starting on Monday in 2 days' time. Then they'll play India, a couple of ODIs and T20s. The next Test match against England is on the 16th, 20th of February.
Yeah, World Cup qualifiers too. The ODIs that are coming up. So there's a little bit on them. I mean, really, both New Zealand's going to qualify. There's no question with that. It's really about seeing if New Zealand can be the top qualifier. It's all about who's going to win that Super League and be the top qualifier. And I think there is something on that. The players aren't quite keen on being the top.
I'll let you have that one, Michael. That's one I'll happily seek defeat in that and stand by and let you take over that top spot. But anyway, Michael, thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. And hopefully we will see you soon again.
Brilliant. We'll catch you around.
No problem. That concludes our podcast, guys. Thank you for watching, and we will see you later.